I do that right now. And let's see. Okay, it should be recorded. You might have gotten a message that says, hey, this session is being recorded, but just know it's only for us and it's only going to be posted on Brightspace so you guys can view it. Okay, welcome to ELEM 416, Mathematics in the 21st Century. I do recognize some of the names because I believe I had you for technology and digital literacy. So hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun in these 8 weeks. I am going to tell you right now, even though we're talking about mathematics, I am not going to teach you everything about mathematics in 8 weeks. There is no way that we can do it, but I want to give you guys an introduction to what teaching mathematics is really like. But let's go over some of the basics, and then we'll dive right in so we can get out of here as quickly as we can. Okay, let's see. Here we go. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dr. David Gago. This is my 5th year at the University of Laverne as an adjunct professor, my 25th year in education. I'm a high school math teacher. I teach at Golden Valley High School here in Bakersfield. I'm also department chair, subject matter facilitator for the district, instructional coach, mentor teacher. So I have a lot of hats that I wear. And I work primarily with a lot of young teachers, new teachers, to help them get acclimated into the teaching field. Okay. A little bit about my, credentials. I have a master's degree in educational technology, another master's in education, and a doctorate in educational leadership. And I'm actually still in school myself. I'm going back for a master's in history. That's one of my first loves is history and political science. So I'm trying to do that as well, maybe teaching college classes that way. For this first week of class, I'm going to show you how this class is structured. You may have watched the welcome video, and if you didn't, no worries. And what you need to complete this week, and then how we're going to kind of go going forward. I want to make sure everyone's clear on things because the last thing I want is you're confused about anything. So this course is structured in a few ways. Usually on Sundays, what I'm going to do is I'll send out a weekly announcement. I'm going to let you know what's going on for this next week. And usually what I'll do is I'll post the assignment so that way you can get started on it if you want to get done early. And I totally understand it. We're all busy. I also send it through email so that way you have multiple ways that you see the assignments. Okay, so if you didn't get an email, let me know. If you didn't see the announcements on Brightspace, let me know. I want to make sure that you're clear on everything, and you can always contact me for anything. So I just want to make sure you know that. Now, we will have a number of Zoom meetings, online meetings. So obviously, this is our first online meeting. We're supposed to have an online meeting on the 17th, on the 1st of May, the 8th of May, the 22nd, and the 29th of May. I can tell you right now, just looking at my schedule, the 17th, we will not meet. It's during our spring break for everybody that's here in the Bakersfield area. So I'm not going to make you come on to Zoom to have a meeting. Okay, so because, well, one, I'm going to be in Vegas. I'm going to WrestleMania, so I'd rather do that. I don't want you guys to have to worry about that. So what I am going to do is I am going to post a video. I'll basically do notes on the video, and what you'll need to do is that there'll be certain tasks that you'll have to do on it. Mainly, like you might have to answer some questions. As long as you answer some questions, and then I'll have an assignment spot where you'll post that. That way I know you've watched the video. And I'll try to post it early next week so that way you can get it done. I don't really want to interfere with your Easter plans. I want you guys to be able to enjoy that week, especially if you are in education. It is our week off. So I will do my best to get that done early next week. So that way you guys will be all set. And then hopefully by the end of the week, you can enjoy that time with your family. And if you go to church or anything like that, I don't want you to have to be worried. Go to church and then do homework. That's not something that we want to do, especially that week. Okay. Now, we do have 2 in-class meetings, okay? We have one on the 24th of April, which is the week after spring break. We're required to have an in-class meeting then, and then the 15th of May. Those are the only times that I will ask you to come to the Bakersfield campus. And again, it is not my intention to keep you there like some teachers, like all the way to 9 o'clock. That's not me. I want to make sure to get you in and out, get what you need to know, so that way we all have families and we all have things we want to do, okay? And if you ever run into any issues, contact me. I can always meet with students virtually, at any time. If you run into any issues, especially when we start looking at our assignments, if you need help, please do not hesitate to ask. We can set up a time where I can talk to you and help you out. I don't want you guys to get frustrated. I know teaching mathematics is totally different than maybe what you're used to. So again, that's my job, is to help you out. Let's see. Oh. Now, typically in a week, you're going to have one or two assignments. If you looked at the syllabus, and we'll go over that in just a little bit, you'll see about one or two major assignments per week. Some you may want to start working on, start getting that going. I provided that in the syllabus, what you have to do. And as we get closer to those assignments, I'll post like the exact things. But for the most part, what you see in the syllabus is what's going to happen inside your assignments. So again, if you think you might need some extra time, or like next week, if you do have extra time, since it's spring break, get what you can done. Start looking at that stuff. You should have, and I've seen some people, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, sign up for your chapter presentations. You want to make sure you sign up if you haven't already done that yet. Sign up so that way you know exactly when you're presenting. Obviously, we can't do everything in person. So if you signed up for the online session, just be prepared to present it online on Zoom like this. And then if you did do the in-class session, then just be prepared to come to class to do it. But you want to start looking at those chapters to see what you might want to do. The other thing is we're going to have discussion boards each week. So I will give you a prompt that you need to respond. It's basically either math or education related, just to get you guys thinking about what you would do in a classroom, especially teaching mathematics. You should get your initial post done by Thursdays so that people have a chance to respond. So I noticed that some people have already done some of that, which is great because that gives people a chance to respond. So really important, and you need to respond to two people by Sunday at midnight. That way you can earn the full credits. Try to keep grammar appropriate. No attacks on people. Let's not do anything like that. But let's make sure that we're answering the questions and the prompts, and you're responding to people thoughtfully. Okay. Now, attendance and participation are necessary in this class because we're doing so much on Zoom. So I see that we've got 5 out of 6 people here. So again, if you're here, make sure you're listening, because I am going to put some prompts in the chat from time to time. And so you'll need to be able to respond. And because I am recording this, I will see who's responding and who's not. So if you're thinking that, hey, I'm just going to sit here and kind of let it play and make it seem like I'm here, I am going to ask for some participation. Not a lot, but I will ask for some as we go through it. Okay, so just make sure you're prepared for that. There's some frequently asked questions that I get all the time. Sometimes I do have to switch assignments in Brightspace compared to the syllabus, only if there's technical issues, or if we're having some, we have to change some things. Always follow Brightspace, because that's where you get graded. So make sure you follow it. I'm not going to all of a sudden spring an assignment on you. What you see in the syllabus is pretty much what you're going to get, but due dates could easily change if we see, oh, we need to do something a little bit different. I'm more than welcome to talk about that if we need to. When it comes to late work, yes, I do accept it. But let's, communicate with me. Let me know. Things happen. I understand that. I have a life. You guys have a life. If we have families, things get crazy, especially, if you got kids in sports, especially spring sports, everything gets wonky, especially scheduling. Talk to me. If you run into any issues, let me know. Don't just ignore it and then you turn and stumbling late. Then you might lose some points, okay? I try not to take a lot of points off, but, if you don't communicate with me, I can't really help you. It's the same way that I talk about my students in my regular classroom. I tell them, let me know what's going on. In fact, today I got an email from one student in my AP stats class. He's going to be gone like right after spring break to Washington, D.C. with a migrant program. I can work with that. I can help him be prepared because he's going to be gone for, about a week, but I can't do it if I don't know. So make sure you let me know if there's anything that goes on. Not a problem with me. Okay. So the things that you need to do this week. You need to do the getting to know you slide, and I saw that I think 4 of you guys have done that already. The reflective essay, basically stars and wishes. You need to sign for chapter presentations, and some of you guys have done so. And the discussion board posts and responses. And I've seen a few people starting to post things, but again, make sure you're getting that done. Try not to wait till Sunday because, it's easy to forget. Okay. But what we need to do, well, actually, one more slide before we get started. If you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, I have 2 email addresses that you can reach me. dgago@laverne.edu. That's our main one for our campus. But I also have my current high. I check both of those. I get both those on my phone. So if you do run into any issues, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I have no problems responding. If I do not respond, if it got maybe sent to a junk folder or something like that, send me another email. Feel free to bug me. I got no problems with that. I would rather you bug me than to not and then be stuck. Okay, so please do not hesitate. So really quickly, I want to go over the syllabus right now. Let me see. Can you guys see it? I just want to make sure you guys can see it on the screen. Yes, no, maybe so.
We're still on the email slide.
Okay. Okay. So I gotta see. Let me change the stop share and let me share again. Sometimes it gets a little wonky here. There we go. Let's see. Can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So there in the syllabus, you see my email addresses. Feel free to email me anytime. You'll notice that we have a textbook, but you don't have to buy it. It's free. It's on the website. Download it. Okay, make sure you have it. And that's where you're going to get your information for your chapter presentations that you're going to do. But you don't have to buy a book. Okay. I was even looking at the books, like newer editions, and I was like, oh man, it's like $160. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that to you guys. So we have a book. Some standards have changed, but nothing major in mathematics. It's not like, 1 + 1 = 2 has changed. So we don't have to worry too much about that. Some of the basic stuff here, but I want to get down to what we are doing. Okay. So you should make sure you pay attention to the course schedule and assignments. Okay. So obviously today we're online Zoom. I'm hoping that you guys got a chance to kind of breeze through over chapters 1, 4, and 6. I am going to talk about that tonight. And then of course the same assignments that I said that you have to do are right there. So I always try to give you guys a list and get you guys prepared for what you have to do so you don't get overwhelmed. This next week, I will have a presentation on chapters 2 and 5. That's the one entering, so that's not a problem. I'll talk about chapters 2, 3, and 5. And again, I will post some questions in there. So you have to watch the video and then respond on a document or something like that and turn that in. So even though that's technically not like an assignment that I put in the syllabus, that is something I will do for next week. So we're not going to meet on Thursday because I will be in Vegas and I'll be enjoying my time. So I want you to enjoy your time. So I'll post that early in the week so you don't have to worry about it. But you do have a few other assignments: literature and math lesson, some word problems, and a discussion board post and responses. So that's still going to happen. So just make sure you set aside the time to get that taken care of. The third week, we are on campus. We'll talk about doing some word problem analysis. If you haven't read the syllabus, you'll kind of see where we're going to actually do some word problems up with each other. Okay, so that's the idea, is that you bring your word problems that you've done. We'll actually do them together. You get kind of see how people work through word problems, especially math word problems, and then kind of analyze what goes on there. And then, of course, you'll have a discussion board, posts, and responses. Week 4 is on Zoom. Okay. You should be looking, and again, this is something you can already start working on, a minority mathematician of historical importance. Look for mathematicians that, are out there that are important, and it can be either recent mathematicians or they can be from the past. So feel free to look for whatever. During that Zoom, I will present my own minority mathematician. So again, I'm going to do that same thing so I can kind of demonstrate in case you need to know what to look for. And of course, you'll have a discussion board, post, and responses. That leads us to week 5, and that's where those chapter presentations are important. We'll have both of those presentations during that time. So if you did sign up for May 8th, you will be presenting on Zoom, and I will help you out with technological issues or anything like that. But we'll be going over what we have to do there. And of course, we'll have discussion board, posts, and responses. So if you chose, May 8th, please make sure that you are prepared for that time. Okay. Moving forward, this term goes by really quick. Before you know it, we're going to be already near June. The 15th, we will be in person. So there'll be the third and fourth person will present during that time. And again, if you are presenting in person, if you need any supplies, if you need any copies made, make sure you let me know ahead of time. I can get that taken care of. I can provide whatever you need so that way you can do the presentation in class. And again, we'll have a discussion board post and responses there. And then the 7th week, we will have a presentation for the last 2 people and a discussion board post and responses. I have a feeling week 8, we will not meet. If I'm not mistaken, that is my school's graduation, so I'm part of that. So there's a pretty good possibility, and I'm not definite yet, but I believe we will not meet on that day. But our big thing is finishing up our course, making sure everything's turned in, everything's done, so that way you're all set. Okay, so again, we may have a couple weeks where we actually don't meet, but make sure you're completing stuff online. Okay. To give you an idea of the assignments that we have to do, you will have a discussion board post and response each week. That's worth 20 points, 10 points for your initial response, 5 points for each response that you give to someone else. So if you don't do all of it, obviously you will not get full points, but make sure you're looking at it. Some of it may reflect into the textbook. I may give you a prompt from the textbook and want you to go look at it. So be prepared. Again, download that textbook so you don't have to worry about it. Again, make sure you're doing the getting to know you slide. Like I said, 4 of you guys have already taken care of that. Make sure you introduce yourself just to kind of get an idea because, again, I'm only going to see you twice. Unless you put your video up on Zoom, I really only going to see you twice. So I'd like to kind of get to know and know a little bit about you as you guys turn in work. So it kind of gives me an idea where what I have. One of your first assignments is the reflective essay. That's Stars and Wishes. You should write a reflection, at least 1 or 2 pages, double space, good grammar, all that stuff, but about your experiences and personal attitude towards math and teaching math. You may already be in the classroom. You may have taught people. You may have been a tutor. You may have been an instructional assistant. So I'd like to know what kind of experiences that you've had, good and bad. Okay. We talk about that with Stars and Wishes. Stars are all the strengths and talents that you have already with math. And then wishes are hopes and dreams of what you want to achieve. Maybe you aren't the greatest in math, and that's okay. What do you want to get better at? But again, I'd like to know what your experiences are, because not all of us have had positive experiences, whether it be in math or in any classes. So it's good to know what you bring to the table, because that's an important piece of being a teacher, is knowing what you've dealt with, so that way you prevent the same thing from happening to your students. Okay, so make sure you turn that in. That would be like a Word document or a PDF file that you turn in on Brightspace. Going into, I believe it's next week. Let me check real quick, just to make sure I'm right. Yes, next week. You should be looking at a children's book that deals with math, or how you can integrate math as part of the book. Okay, so again, it could be any children's book. And then you want to design a lesson on how you're going to use math with that book. Now, I'm not expecting a perfect lesson, but just like if you were to read this to kids or have the kids read it, what kind of math concepts do you want them to know out of it? And that's what we really want to get towards. I'm not expecting a full-blown lesson plan or anything, but if you're going to use something in a classroom, why is it important? And if we can bring literacy along with math, that is very powerful for our students, because we always want to connect literacy skills to our mathematics, because literacy is the key to almost everything. If they can't read, they're not going to be able to do math either. So we want to make sure that we're looking at what kind of literature can really get them engaged in math. It could be any type of book. Just feel free to, if you already know a book, go for it. But really what you're doing is you're going to create a lesson that you're going to screencast. Those that have been with me before should remember how to do screencasting. If not, I will help people out. But make a screencast of what you would do to show me how you would do math with it. Okay. You can do that with a PowerPoint, or Google Slides, use whatever screencasting tools, but just show me what are you doing? But I need you to explain the lesson, and I need to see the picture of the book. Okay. So if you have it, make sure you either take a picture, put it on your slides, or post it up so that way I can see the book, because it may be a book that I want to buy. So I'm always looking for different literature, something to engage students, whether that be younger students or older students. However you want to approach it, just find a book and do that. So you will need to post a picture of the cover so I can see what it is, and do a screencast. It does not have to be a super long screencast, okay? I'm not expecting that, but I do need to know how you're integrating math in it, and what might you do with the students? What might you have them do? Okay, so you got to start thinking about that. Going forward, also you need to create 5 math word problems. Okay, so that means you pick the topic. I'm not worried about what topics that you pick it from, what math it is. You just have to pick 5 word problems, create them, make it interesting, because what we're going to do in class is what we're going to actually do those word problems in class. So you need to make sure it's legible, or type it up and make sure it makes sense that it can be solved. It is perfectly appropriate to look online for some ideas, but try not to just copy and paste, because that's not enough. The other thing that you have to do when you do these word problems is that you need to show your work on how you would solve it. What skills do they need to know to solve it? Because when we get to the next part, the word problem analysis, we want to make sure that people are doing it the way that you're thinking that it's supposed to be done. And if they do something different, we want to investigate why that is, which leads me to word problem analysis. Okay, so that one class meeting we're having, I believe on the 26th of April, we are going to, or 24th of April, I'm sorry, we are going to do some word problem analysis. Now, one of the things is that we're going to use adults, you guys, when we go into class, to solve some word problems. And you guys are going to have paper and solve the problems and see if they match up with the correct solution. We want to make sure we're doing things right. But what I'd like you to do, and it helps if you have students at home or you work in a school, is to have a student do it, have a child do it, and see if they get the same answers and how do they solve it. We want to look at, like, how do kids use mathematics to solve problems, okay? Because that's really where Common Core and all of our education system is going. We're looking at getting kids to think critically, and understanding how they think makes a difference in how we instruct them and how we move them forward. So that's why we're going to be doing that. And again, we're going to spend some class time on that meeting day on the 24th in class doing word problems and analyzing it. So you're not doing it all by yourself. We're going to be working as a group doing it. But then at the same time, hopefully you've already had a child do it. So now you can kind of compare how people look at that. Okay. And again, it could be any grade level, and it can be any topic. Ideally, it's probably the topics that you're picking for your chapter presentations, because that kind of leads into some of the activities you might do. Okay. One of the other assignments is a minority mathematician of historical importance. Okay. So think about, a mathematician could be way long ago, like Pythagoras. It could be Euclid. It could be anybody. There's people that are recent in the last, half century. But what you're going to try to do is make like a magazine type article. So think about a magazine. If they did an article on a person, how would you write that? So you should know where they lived, if they're still living, of course, what they invented or what their accomplishments were, what time period in this history did this person live, how did the time and place affect their invention or discovery, what inspired them, what obstacles did they have, and then how has it affected us? What's important about what they did? Now, they don't have to have an invention. They could be an influential teacher that's a minority. Okay. So think, when you think mathematician, it's not always someone that made something that like changed the world, but maybe it's something that's influenced other people. Okay. So think of that. There are some websites there. I believe they work. If they don't, I'll have to check the links. But there are definitely some people that you can look at there. You're more than welcome to pick anybody. But we just need to make sure we're doing a little kind of almost a biography of that person and why they are important. Okay. And I believe that is due the 4th week, if I'm not mistaken. So just, you may want to get started on it. The sooner you get some of these things done, the sooner the better. Okay. Then our chapter presentations. This is the big part. Okay. Obviously, it's worth a lot of points. So what you're going to do is present a chapter presentation from the text. Okay. So some of you guys have already picked, and we'll kind of go into what that looks like. You're going to select 4 activities that represent topics from that chapter. You pick the activities. Okay. So how would you teach, if we were talking about equations, if you were, picking multiplication, what activities would you have them do? What would be important for them to know how to do to learn the topic? Okay. So part of the chapter presentation is that you're going to tell us what those chapter topics is. So you're going through that entire chapter, You're telling us what the topics are, the goals for teaching that, and based on the grade level that you have chosen to focus on. Okay. Now, again, if you're teaching first grade, it's going to look a lot different than teaching sixth grade, and that's okay. But the idea is that we want to start thinking about how would we teach mathematics to those students. You're going to present those activities. So you need to pick 4 activities. Okay. They can't all be the same, but 4 different ones that you're going to have us basically do. You're basically going to kind of teach us and have us go through the activity and see if we get the results that you're expecting. You're going to state the Common Core standards and the grade level that you're going to do. And again, we'll go over that probably starting next week, talk about Common Core standards. So that's kind of a hint, start being prepared for that. You should also think about how would you assess students to determine if the learning you wanted took place. And then what kind of extension or remediation activities do you think you might need for advanced or struggling students? We know we have those kids that can answer every question. We also have those kids that can't. What do we do in those cases? What type of intervention are we going to do? And how would you approach that? Again, I am not expecting you to have all the answers, because if you do, we could probably write a book together and we can make some money. But honestly, it's just starting to think like, how would you approach that from a teacher point of view to get those students, to that next level? You can use PowerPoint, you can use Google Slides to create your presentation. Prezi, I know some people use that stuff, but just make sure you have a presentation. If you need us to access any online materials to help with the activities, make sure you let me know so I can have those links, everything ready for you, so that way you don't have to worry about that. And again, if we're presenting in class, if you want us to do like a paper activity, let me know. I will make copies and all that stuff. I will take care of that. You just got to give me a heads up, okay? The last thing, attendance participation, 10 points per week. Like I said earlier, and if you came in a little bit late, there'll be some questions that I'm going to pose in the chat from time to time. So make sure you have that ready. If I pose a question, I'll let you know. Make sure you answer. That's part of your participation. Last thing, I remember the COVID era where I saw lots of black screens and I didn't know if they were awake or not. I saw a lot of ceiling fans. And I saw some sleeping students. They turn on their screen, and I saw they were sleeping. They weren't paying attention. So I need to know that you are participating. So that's part of it. As long as you're participating, you're doing the best job you can, you're going to get those points. I mean, I think it comes out to about 15% of your grade if you just show up and participate. So that can help you out. Okay. So any questions on that? I'm going to check the chat right now in case there's anything. I don't see anybody answering any questions, but if you have a question, go ahead and put in the chat at any time. Please do not hesitate. If you need me to slow down, let me know. That's why it's there, or you can unmute yourself and let me know. So I'll give you a second to kind of digest all that before we keep going. Okay, it doesn't look like I see anything in the chat, but I have it open, so just in case. But again, if you do have questions, do not hesitate to put in it. If you think it's a question that we should all talk about, then that's obviously something that's important too. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me. It doesn't bother me one bit. So let me get off of this screen and let me go back to what I was doing before. Let's see. It should go now. Boom. Okay. Can you guys see this screen? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I got the right setting this time, so I can go back and forth. The sign-ups for the chapter presentations. This. I've seen a number of you guys. Oh, hey, boom. We got people signing up. So just make sure you sign up and you put your date. Again, you pick the chapter. It's what topic you feel most comfortable with. This course is only 8 weeks long. I could not do all those chapters and get you guys all ready to teach mathematics. There's no way. But I want you to pick the things that you really enjoy, and that way it'll be that much more real to you. So I see that 4 of you guys have picked dates. Again, 2 of you guys need to pick. One person needs to pick a chapter, and then 2 people need to pick dates. Obviously, the 8th is now taken care of because we only can do 2 per day. So we have the 15th, one for the 15th, and one for the 22nd. So first come, first serve. So just make sure you get that. Again, I look forward to seeing what you guys have with those chapters. And again, if you do run into any issues, please don't hesitate. Ask me. I will help you. I will get you materials, or I'll give you ideas of things that you can look at. Especially if you took my technology and digital literacy class, you might remember some of the stuff there. Again, if you have those Google files, you can start looking at some of those activities that you could do that you might be able to incorporate with those things. But again, it's up to you, and whatever help you need, that's what I will do. Okay, so let's see. Oh, that's the getting to know you, and it looks like I've got 4 people. Okay, so make sure you get your pictures and everything like that. Kind of get to know you. Once you do that, make sure you go back onto Brightspace and turn that in. And speaking of Brightspace, I'm going to show this to you right here. It probably looks a little bit different on my part than your part because I'm in the teacher mode. But you should see the week 1 overview. I always have a video, so that way you can always refer to. In this case, I have the syllabus and the textbook. Again, download the textbook. I think it's like 100 megabytes. Sorry it's so large, but it's better than paying $160. So make sure you download that so that way it's easy to access, or put it in a cloud somewhere so that way you can access it from anywhere. But make sure you have that. This is the getting to know you slide. Once you click on the slide deck and you've done your part, make sure you go back into here, click on it, and then type in done on the text submission, and then turn it in. And then I know to look, oh, you got it done, and give you the points. That's how I give you the points there. All right, here is the reflective essay part, stars and wishes. So make sure you go here, excuse me, you'll click on it, turn in your file. So that could be a document file, a Word document, or a PDF file. I don't believe it's going to do a link. Okay, so if you do a Google Doc, which is perfectly fine, make sure you download it into a PDF, especially if you don't have Microsoft on your computer. Download it to a PDF and then turn it in, and then you're fine that way. Okay, but if you do run into any technical issues turning it in, please do not hesitate to ask. Obviously, we saw our signups for the chapter presentation, so just make sure you do that. And then our week 1 discussion board post. Again, every week we'll have one, but I want you to describe your journey into the field of education. Why are you getting into education? Why do you want to be a teacher? Um, some people might be in it for just, I want to get paid regularly. I understand that. Or I've worked in education, I like it, or I have a passion for it. I'd like to know why you are here. What's your why? How much experience do you have? I've worked with teachers that have 0 experience, and I've worked with teachers that have tons of experience coming in that makes it easy for them to adjust. How comfortable are you with teaching students? Have you been in front of a classroom, whether that could be a Sunday school class, or have you done anything where you've had to teach students, even teaching your own kids? And sometimes that's the hardest part. It's probably harder to teach your own kids than it is to teach other kids. And how good are you with technology? In this day and age, technology is a big thing, and it's expected that you do know some of it. You don't have to be an expert right now, but you are expected to know some of it. And then, what are some questions that either I or your fellow students might be able to answer about education and teaching mathematics? So you might see me respond to some of these discussion board posts. Just to, if I see a question that I think I can answer or might help out with, I'm going to answer it. Doesn't mean that anybody else's answers are not valid, but I do like to be participatory with this stuff. So that way, you know that I am paying attention to what you guys are writing. So don't be surprised if you see me respond here and there. Especially if I see some really good points, something I want to hey, let's look at that. It's really important. Or any misconceptions that we want to get taken care of. But again, please try to post your initial response by Thursday at midnight, which is today. If you haven't done it, no worries. Just make sure try to, because it gives people a chance to respond by Sunday. Okay, it's the same thing that I have to do for my college classes. For Southern New Hampshire University, which I'm going through. I had to submit my discussion board post tonight, but I did it yesterday because I'm obviously teaching you guys. So that way, then I can respond to 2 other people, by the end of the weekend. So again, give people an opportunity to respond. If you wait till Sunday, no one can really respond, or they may not see your post, and it may be the most important post that's important to them. But you want to make sure that people can see that. Okay. Any questions about what we have to do this week? Just want to make sure. I'm checking the chat. Got a thumbs up. Thank you. Got another thumbs up right there. Yeah. Just want to make sure, and again, don't hesitate to put anything in the chat, so that way we can take care of this. Okay, so I don't think there's anything that I see. If you run into a broken link or something's not working, let me know. I will fix it. Okay, trust me, that happens. No matter what I do, sometimes websites die and literally die, and I think it's there and it's not there, so I have to go back and find it. So that's not a problem. Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of tonight. Again, like I said, I want to get you guys out of here in a reasonable amount of time, so I'm going to go forward. Feel free to take notes as you need to, but like I said, I am recording this so that way you can go back, because some of the stuff is going to be really important as you start thinking about your chapter presentations. Okay, so again, everything that I'm trying to talk to you is kind of give you a little bit overview of what we're doing in education for mathematics, but also helping you prepare to teach students, because that's a big thing. Okay, so teaching mathematics in the 21st century is definitely different than maybe when you grew up, or even when I grew up. I'm a child of the 1900s. It's hard to believe I'm that old now, but the way that I learned is definitely different than the way our students learn today. Okay, so really important. This is something for the chat right now. Which do you think people would feel worse about? Not knowing how to read or not being good at math? How would you respond to that? Respond in the chat. Let me know. I see a couple responses. Thank you. Give you guys a chance to type in. And again, everybody's opinion is important and valid. So even if it's different than someone else's, don't feel bad about that. Looks like we've had most of you guys respond. Personally for me, I will tell you, you will almost never hear someone say, I can't read. But you will find people that say, I can't do math, and they are happy about it. That's kind of our cultural thing right now in society, is like, if someone says they can't read, you're looked at like, oh my gosh, who are you? But if you say you don't do math, everybody says, well, couldn't do math. I didn't understand math. It's like a badge of honor almost. So we want to get students away from that, kind of symbolism that we have going on. Okay. But the thing about mathematics, it's all about logic. It's about solving problems. It's about disseminating information and coming up with solutions, even crazy solutions that you might not think of. But it's all about putting pieces and puzzles together. Math is not just numbers, but it encompasses so much more that is important to our society. Okay. Jobs increasingly, especially employers, they want people who can do some math. Okay. Now I'm going back a long ways. When I worked at McDonald's as a 17-year-old and the power went out, which means the registers didn't work, I can't tell you how many of my colleagues, I'm 17 years old and they're like, how do I do the math? I'm like, oh, well, it's easy. But that's because I was good at the math. But if you're not good at math and you get stuck in a spot where you need it, that can really expose deficiencies and make it tougher for you to get good jobs. So encouraging students to be good at math is extremely important. It's our job to prepare the next generation of students. This world is changing. We can see the changes that are happening right now politically and how that's affecting jobs going in the future. Okay. We have to encourage our students to be really, really good at math, because it could mean the difference between having a really good job and living paycheck to paycheck, as I know a lot of people do. Oh, back when a cheeseburger was 35 cents. Yep. I remember when the hamburgers were like 25 cents when they had the deals at McDonald's. Yeah, that was fun. I remember a Big Mac meal at $2.99. Sausage muffin with egg meal, $1.99 when I worked at McDonald's. I thought that was expensive. Oh man, it's like $10 for a Big Mac meal now. That's how crazy inflation has gotten. But that's also math. So mathematical standards that we need to understand. The Common Core state standards for mathematics are basically the standards that are used to teach mathematics now. For many years, it was kind of a hodgepodge of different things. Each state had their own standards. For the most part, most states have gone to the Common Core state standards. What's not changed is the math is still the same, but how we look at it. Okay, so it may seem like it's different math than when you did when you were a kid, but it really is still the same math. It's just done a little bit differently to foster how we look at it. Because I understand the need for us to have rote mathematical skills. We should know what 5 times 5 is like that. We shouldn't hesitate. But then when we get to a little bit more complicated things, sometimes there's multiple ways of looking at a problem. We want to encourage that critical thinking. Okay. So what Common Core is, and I know that, a lot of people diss it, but it's focusing on learning progressions. How do you learn from step to step to step? Because we can memorize math facts. I remember taking those timed 1 minute or 5-minute tests on multiplication, which might be the anxiety that people have about math right now. I know that was the way it was with my stepson. He hated those things, but those math facts are important. But then once you know them, why are they important? And that's the whole purpose of Common Core, really going down to why. Why do we need to know this? Why is it important? And a fact by itself is not enough, but how can we use those facts to get to that next level? That is the goal of the mathematics standards. People think, well, I need to know all of my multiplication tables. That's not a standard. How I use my multiplication tables or my multiplication facts, that's more important. So critical thinking is pretty much the key to everything. It's a priority. We know in life, sometimes problems aren't easy to solve, like x plus 5 equals 10. Sometimes there's so many different variables, so many different things, but the ability to think critically, logically, and abstractly, in ways that, are unusual to most people, helps us to find multiple approaches to solving problems. And people that are able to do that are going to get the good jobs. And we want our students to be those type of students where they are thinking outside the box. Because the more they think outside the box, the better opportunities they're going to have when situations approach. Too many of our students, for years, it was all about, when we did our state tests, it was about, can we regurgitate the facts on a multiple choice test? Our state tests now are not like that. They are more in depth. They want to see what the students are thinking, because even if they get the answer wrong, if they are thinking logically, because you can make a mathematical error, but it doesn't mean that your process was wrong. And I think that's the thing that we unfortunately think about math. It's either right or wrong, but sometimes even if we make an error, we know we're actually doing things right. And that's not a bad thing to convey to our students. And I think that's something we need to really get down and deep in mathematics about, and especially teaching. Now, we have the standards for mathematical practice. This is something that's, NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, does, that you should be doing in each of your classes. You should be having students making sense of problems and persevering in solving them. You should have students reason abstractly and quantitatively. Each grade level is different in how you do all these things. They should be able to construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others, logical reasoning. They should be able to model with mathematics, real-life modeling, use appropriate tools strategically in the right spots. We always want them to be precise. We want the right answer, that's for sure. We want to look for and make use of structure, because some of the structures can help us get through these problems, but look for patterns, and that's where our last one is. Look for and express regularity in repeated reasoning. Are there patterns for what they're seeing, and can they express it? Because that can help them lead to, oh, well, I see this, therefore this is the answer. And then guiding principles as part of teaching. We should be focusing on the teaching and learning, obviously, but we should also look at access and equity. Okay, we know that not every school is built the same. Not every school has the same resources. How can we promote access and equity? how do we deal with curriculum? That's one of those things that when you get into a classroom, there will be things called curriculum, and how do you approach that with the needs of your students? Tools and technology. How do you incorporate these tools to help the mathematics, not take over for it, but incorporate it and help the students get to where they need to be? How do we assess students? That's an important piece. How do you know that they've learned it? And what will you do if they haven't, or what will you do when they do know it? And then professionalism. I know it seems crazy to think professionalism, but believe it or not, professionalism is a big key in teaching. So I do have a question for you. And let me post it there. The question I have for you, real quickly, looking at the left-hand side, which of these standards for mathematical practice do you feel students need the most? This is not a right or wrong answer. Based upon what I just said, maybe you've done a little bit of the reading. What do you think is the most important thing in your mind that students, maybe that you're thinking grade level, that they need to know? So what I want you to do is put it in the chat. I'll give you about another minute or so. Gives me a chance to get a drink since I'm talking a lot. But what do you think? Which one do you think is the most important that you do? I'm not saying why. Which one do you think is the most important? No wrong answers here. And again, we're just looking at the left-hand side at the moment. Got a couple of people who responded. Make sure the rest of you do so. Four or five. One more. Okay. A lot of you guys picked that first one, making sense of problems and persevere in solving them. I think that speaks a lot to our generation right now of learners who are right here, right now. What can I get right now? We're so used to our phones. I mean, I've got my phone right here. I can access everything. I can run this meeting from my phone. We're so used to like having answers right away. And so when it becomes hard, when it's not easy, a lot of times students give up. We want to encourage that perseverance. So yes, I see where a lot of you guys say that. I also agree with the reason abstractly and quantitatively. How do we reason and see, what's happening? You have to think about what do the numbers show? What do they show in terms of something that's really important? What do they show overall? A lot of times when we talk statistics, even in lower levels, when we talk statistical analysis, it's like, what do the numbers tell us? What story do they tell us? So that's also a wonderful thing to think about. So again, all of your guys' answers are right. There is no one that's the most important, but it is something that when you as a teacher, you have to look at what your students have and don't have and where you have to meet those needs. So again, great responses. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do have another question for you. This goes along with the right-hand side now. Nope, hold on. Didn't copy it the way I wanted to. Let me see. Let's see. Now think about your practice right now. Think about where you're at. Which one of these principles do you think you're going to need the most help with when you get into your classroom? And again, no wrong answers. I can tell you from my experience, there were a lot of things I struggled with on my first couple years of teaching. I've been doing this a long time. It took a while to learn. Just like any type of activity that we learn, it's tough at the very beginning. So let's see. I see a few people responding. And again, no wrong answers here. No wrong answers. So don't feel like if someone posted something, you have to post the exact same answer. It's okay. The majority of you guys picked 3, which is curriculum. And curriculum is a big thing because we have things that we have to teach, and we usually have a book that we have to teach from. We have resources. And how do you navigate those resources? Yes, it's tough. I deal with a lot of new teachers, and they feel overwhelmed, and it is like that at first. It takes experience. I agree with that. Understanding how to use, as one person put, tools and technology. Yes. How do you incorporate all this stuff at the same time you're trying to teach it? You're trying to do curriculum, you're trying to do access and equity, be professional. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie. It is a lot. So if you do feel a little overwhelmed at first, you're not going to be alone. And hopefully you'll have a lot of good mentors that will be able to help you when you're there to help you with the curriculum, with the tools and technology, and with all of that stuff to make your first couple years the best they can be. Again, even administrators don't expect you to have it down the first couple of years. I'm working with a couple of young teachers, and they're worried that, oh my gosh, the administrators are not going to like me. It says, do you have control of your class? Yeah. Are you teaching them? Yeah. Are your lessons perfect? They're like, no. Okay, that's fine. My lessons weren't perfect probably for many years. It took a while. It's an art. So don't be shocked at that. But if you know where you're at, and makes it easy to figure out where you want to go. Okay, so thank you again for those responses. I do appreciate that. Kind of gives me a basis to kind of look at what we need to look at. Okay, so becoming a teacher of mathematics, you have to have knowledge of mathematics. Okay, so if you're going to the elementary school field, which I believe most of you guys may be, you got to know your math. Okay, you have to study it. Even if you weren't the best math student, you need to study it because you are going to get those students who will question why it is. You need to know why it's important, and you need to know like how you're going to incorporate it. So please do not think that, hey, I can go get a book and it's just going to boom, boom right there. You have to study it. As you study more, the easier it becomes. Just because I got a degree in mathematics didn't mean that I knew how to teach it right away. I had to look deeper into it. What I fundamentally understood before when I learned it first doesn't mean that translated the same way to teach it. So I had to learn, how do people learn about the mathematics and what's important about it that I needed to focus on? What are some things that maybe I can save for later? That's an important part of being a teacher. You have to have persistence. Kids are going to drive you wild. It doesn't matter what age they are. They are going to have questions. They are going to test you. You have to be persistent when teaching mathematics because a lot of them will say, I don't understand, because they don't want to do it. Just as much as we want them to be persistent, you have to be persistent. You can't let them dictate what they learn. You have to really push them. And sometimes it's going to be a push and pull. Okay, so don't worry about that. You're going to feel overwhelmed at times. It's okay. We all feel that way. But you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to put in that effort. You got to be positive. If you say you're negative about mathematics, I guarantee you they will be negative about mathematics. If you're happy about English or you're happy about history, they're going to be happy about it because you're going to be more engaged. So you have to sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, and that's something that happens, but you have to be positive for them. The moment you show that you don't like it, they're not going to like it, and they're not going to see the importance in it. Very important on that one. You got to be open to change. I can tell you right now, as a teacher, I have gone through at least 3 or 4 iterations of how teaching is in just 25 years. It changes. Standards change, the way we do things change, technology changes. So you have to be prepared for change. You should always be looking towards the future. Like, what kind of trends do you see? So get yourself involved when you are in the classroom into what's happening in mathematics teaching. I know if you're if you're an elementary school teacher, you're going to have numerous subjects, but you should always think about like, how can I see what's happening to be prepared if there's change happening? You got to be able to work in a team. I can't stress how important this is in this day and age. We call them professional learning communities or professional learning teams. You'll hear that term quite a bit. Why is that important? If you work in a team, you guys help to make your jobs easier with each other. You should never think about having to do it all by yourself. Please don't think that. It used to be you got the keys to your classroom, you're told, hey, you got these students, go. Not anymore. We really try to work together, all levels, to do the best we can because someone might have a great idea and we need to share it with everybody. Someone might be struggling and we need to help them out. We get the whole school better if we work together. And that's going to be important. So if you're used to doing things by yourself, you're going to have to get out of that because you're going to be working with grade level teams. You might be working with subject level teams. Be prepared for that. Working as a team is pretty much education. And especially if we're trying to get all of our students where we need them to be, that is important. And the last thing right here is becoming a teacher of mathematics. You have to be willing to learn. Okay, it's important. You got to be willing to learn about the math. You got to be willing to learn about different ways of approaching it, different tools. You have to also be reflective on your practice. Okay, I am not the same teacher that I was my first year back in 2000. It seems so long ago, but I'm a different teacher now. What I thought back then, I definitely realized, okay, that didn't work. I tried different things out. I'm willing to try it out. Hey, someone said, try this. Okay, I tried it. Maybe I liked it. Maybe I didn't. I've done different ways of grading, different things. I try to find what's best for me, and I encourage my teachers to find what's best for them. And that be willing to change. Be willing to learn, but be reflective of your practice. Did it go well? It's okay if you didn't go well the first time. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you think it didn't go well, but it actually did well. But be reflective and be honest with yourself. Don't be self-deprecating to where you feel like you're doing everything wrong. Because believe it or not, people will tell you you're doing things right. You just don't realize it because you don't have that, the air of experience. Okay. Experience will tell you if you're doing things right. But until you have that, you will feel like you're a failure at times. And it's not that you are. It really isn't. When we talk about lesson formatting, this is kind of going towards where we're looking at our chapter presentation. So I just want to make sure you guys are there. You should be looking at a three-phase format for lessons. You should look at before you start the lesson, during the lesson, and then after the lesson. There are different ways to approach it, but you should be looking at 3 phases of this. If you look at those 3 phases, you can design really crucial and important and engaging lessons if you follow kind of this format. The before lesson phase is probably one of the most critical, okay? You got to get students ready to engage in math. So if you're an elementary school teacher, you're going to go from like language arts and then turn and say, oh, guys, we're going to get ready for math. You're going to hear like, oh, that's going to happen. Especially if you're doing something fun in one subject. So how are you going to get them ready? That's that before lesson phase, especially when you have to pivot. I know for me as a high school teacher, they're coming from a different class or coming to school, at the start of the day, and I have to get them ready to do math. And I've got to get them ready to switch their gears. So it's really important the before phase that you get them ready to understand what they have to do. You must activate their prior knowledge. I can't stress this one enough. All of our kids come in with some knowledge, some with more than others. Some of them have some really good ideas. We have to activate it because those are going to be important for them to be like, oh, I already know something about this. Oh, I can do this. You want to do something where you relate it to them. So if they have some knowledge on a particular topic or you did something maybe a previous day, that's something where you can activate it. A lot of times that could be a warm-up activity. That could be a little game that they do at the start of the period, something just to get them engaged. You also have to make sure that students know what are they going to do. I mean, just like I give you guys, a video and I tell you what you're doing each week, you have to do the same thing with the student. Now, you don't have to go as deep as I'm doing, but you have to kind of tell them like, what are we doing today? Why is this important? Make sure they understand what we are going to do. So maybe something we're going to work in groups, or we're going to work by ourselves, or we're going to do this activity. Make sure they understand, because for every student, a routine is important. And if they know what you're doing, it makes it easier to be like, Mister, I don't know what we're doing. What are we doing? What are we doing? You don't want to get all those. You want to be like, hey, this is what we're doing, and they will know it. And then you want to establish clear expectations. Now, this is part of just basic classroom management. They should know what to expect. If they need to get certain materials, they should know that. There's expectation. Get your materials, go back to your seat. Get your calculator, go back to your seat. Pull out your notebook, go back to your seat. All those things should be clear. Now, again, that's something you build into the classroom. That'll be part of your classroom management. But as part of each lesson, they should know. When I do lessons, I say, hey, make sure you have your notebook, make sure you have this. You're going to need a calculator, make sure you get it. The clear expectation, hey, make sure you're paying attention, because this is important. And once you do that a few times, that, the before lesson phase is something that's going to be kind of common for everything you do. But once you have that down, it's not like they're going to be wondering, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's going to be like, okay, we got to do this. And a lot of times, students will police themselves, believe it or not. If a student's acting up, sometimes the students will be the ones, hey, we're doing this, get to work. They will do that to each other, even from a young age, because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to lose their recess or anything like that. So, hey, they're going to be like on each other. And that's okay, because if you set those expectations early, they know what to expect. Now, once you get that done and you're getting ready to get into the meat and potatoes of the lesson, and again, before I go on, these don't have to happen in order. You don't have to activate the prior knowledge before you establish the clear expectations. You don't have to make sure you understand the task before the expectations or vice versa. Again, this should not take a lot of time. This should be something that's built into your routines of the classroom. And this goes for any subject. If you notice, I'm not really talking math right here. I'm just talking basic lesson planning. Okay, how will you get the kids to really like, hey, what are we doing here? It works for math, but it also works for other subjects. When we get to the during lesson phase, this is where you're teaching the mathematics. You can have them work individually or with groups. You could be doing a lesson plan where you're teaching on the board and then they're working with people. That's that phase right there. This is the most critical phase where they are learning the math you want them to know. Some essential instructional decisions you have to make when you do this. You have to let go. It's not let's go, it's let go. Too many times as teachers, even as parents, we can be like this. We don't give our students a chance to do it. We almost do it for them. We answer the question for them. How many of you guys maybe answer the questions or complete the sentences for your own kids when they're trying to explain something to you? Let go and let them do it. They need to see it. Okay. In mathematics, it's important. You have to let them experiment. You have to let them try. You have to let them fail. It's okay. Failure in mathematics is not something like for a grade. It's failure understanding what they did wrong so they can get better. Okay. So it's really important that you let go. You also have to pay attention to the way they're thinking. Okay. We want them to think a certain way. That's why we do the lessons. But you got to pay attention to how they are thinking and figure out how are they getting to point A to point B in their minds. It's tough to do it when 30 kids in a class, but you got to pay attention to that. You have to also think about how would a student think about this problem and where might there be some misconceptions? Where might be some places where they might struggle? That's part of the learning how to teach mathematics. So that way you can address those when it's time. Okay. Think about where you might have struggled. Maybe it's a way you say something or do something. Maybe it might be a procedure in mathematics. Where might they get a hiccup? And if you can pay attention to the way they're thinking, then you can address it in their way to get them back on track. And then you want to provide appropriate support. And this kind of goes with that let go. Don't do it for them. Don't answer their question for them. Make them think. But you almost want to use it like a Socratic method. You want to give them questions that'll lead them to answers so they can think about it themselves and they feel that way. Don't just give them the answer. That's the worst thing you could do for a student. You want them to think and make them feel like they came up with the answer. You're just guiding them. Some people will need more support than others. You might have to go a little bit more step by step. Other students, you just might have to say one word or point at something and boom. Oh, they're like, okay, I got it. Sometimes it's like that. But you have to be ready to kind of manage who you need to do a little bit more with and who you might not have to do a lot with. And who you put people around, because we know how classrooms can be, what's going to be best for them. Is it Johnny and John Do they get along? If they don't get along, well, that's not going to help them out. And that's where you're going to have problems with the learning. But you might put Johnny and Jessica together because they work well together and they can support each other. So there's that portion of it too that's included. So it's not always about how you teach it, but it's how you arrange your classroom to make it the most appropriate way. And then think about extensions to your lessons. Okay, we want them to learn one thing, and that's fine. Once they got that standard, that's great. We always want them to go further. We want them to go farther than what we expect. So you have to think about, how could I extend it? If they all get it in 5 minutes, what are you going to do? Can't just stop and just go to the next subject. You need to think about, okay, what could they do to get even better at this? Because our goal is to get them up here. If they got the basics, they're here, but we want to get them up here. What extensions can they do? Are there extra problems, not extra problems for homework, but like extra problems to make them think, challenging them? What are some things that you could do to make it worthwhile, that they really dive deep into it? And again, we're talking about mathematics, so there's always a way that you can go a little bit deeper depending on the types of students you have. The after lesson phase is probably after the during is probably very critical. Okay. But a lot of it's not just you, but it's also the students. Okay. You have to be intentional for what you do after you've taught the lesson, but you also have to see what the students are doing. Okay. You should listen to the student discourse. Okay. How are the students talking about the math? So if you give them a task, you have them do something. Are they talking about the task? Are they getting down and dirty? Or are they talking about, hey, what am I doing after school? Am I getting an ice cream cone or something like that? Listen to that student discourse. That means taking care of things when you need to. But if they're talking mathematics, you don't want to change that. You don't want to interrupt that unless they're really going the wrong way with it. But if they're doing the right thing, let them discourse with each other. Let them talk to each other, because sometimes student-to-student interactions are so powerful that, yeah, we're more of a facilitator than we are the teacher. And that's, they're learning. So you listen to that student discourse. Use formative assessment to gauge the learning. Okay, you should always be doing this. If you don't know, and I'll post a question about this in just a minute, if you're not assessing the students, and that doesn't mean you're assessing them to give them a grade. If you're not assessing their learning, how will you know that they know it? If we think about tests, usually we give a unit test at the end of a chapter or something like that. If a kid doesn't know it, what then? It's kind of like we call a summative assessment like an autopsy. They're dead at that point if they didn't know it. What are you going to do? You might not be able to bring them back to life. So why wait until that moment? Formative assessment is like going to the doctor and figuring out there's something wrong before it gets really bad. So you want to make sure you're assessing them. This could be, just a couple questions. This could be something technologically based. This could be something where they actually have to do a math problem, where they raise their hand. I have some teachers that use what we call fist to five. Fist means we don't understand. Five means we understand it completely. Somewhere in between, and you can kind of gauge how the class is. Thumbs up, thumbs down. You can do whiteboards where they give you answers, so you can kind of quickly gauge what they know and what they don't know. Okay, so that's really important, because the last thing you want to do is teach for an entire day and then they don't know what they're doing. You want to identify areas where students might struggle. Okay, so if you see like all of them are struggling, say multiplying by sixes, okay, identify that and how will you address it? If you saw that they did some things wrong, certain steps wrong, identify those areas where they're struggling. Identify which students might need more assistance and be prepared for that. Okay, those are important things. If you notice, I haven't really talked about like the lesson itself, but these are tips as a teacher that you will need to know. So how do you prepare a lesson? Okay, you have to decide on the standards to be taught and assessed. Okay, so when you guys are going through your chapters, decide on which standards it matches up with. And how would you assess if they've learned that standard? if you notice, I haven't designed the lesson yet. I just picked the standards and how would we assess them? Because how you assess them should be how they're going to be taught. Because if they're going to learn it, they should learn it in the way that you're going to teach or test them on. Okay. The last thing you want to do is teach them a whole bunch of stuff and then test them totally differently and then realize they don't know it the way that you're expecting it on a test. That is bad teaching. I would tell you to create the assessment first. So in your chapter presentations, how would you assess the topics that you picked? So how will that drive your activities that you pick? See how we're going backwards. I don't know if any of you guys have taken lesson planning courses yet, or if you're in the credential program yet, but UDL, Universal Design, okay? Those type of lesson plans start backwards. You start at the end and you work backwards to figure out how you're going to teach it to get them to that point. I remember growing up, as a teacher starting, I would create these lessons and then I create a test at the end, and then I'd be like, well, they didn't understand it. But the questions at the end didn't match what I was doing with the lessons. So yeah, the kids aren't going to understand it, especially if it's fundamentally different. So we want to make sure that you get the test so that way, okay, I know we got to test on these problems. I got to make sure I talk about these type of problems as part of my lesson. So if they've done it, then they should be able to do the test. If I haven't done that, I cannot expect them to do the test, and I will not get good test results. Make sure you need to consider the needs and abilities of your students. Make sure that the task helps with the students that you have, what they can and can't do. It meets the standards, and then it's leading towards the assessment. Playing games is fun, but if it doesn't do a job, you've wasted time. In our area, we have 180 days of instruction. Figure with testing, with holidays, with performances on our campuses, you might have 150 days that you have to cover all of the standards. You have to be intentional and explicit in what you're doing, but also thinking about the students. Okay. So it's really important that you do take the time to think about, is this worthwhile? I would love to play games with my students every day, but if they're not going to learn it, it's a waste of time. Now, is there times for games and stuff like that? Yes, but you got to design them so they do what you want them to do. And then make sure you reflect and refine after the lesson to fix or extend the learning. And when I say that, there are days that I go through where it's like, man, they seem to be like, they don't understand anything. I need to go back and not teach it louder and slower, but teach it in a different way. Think about a different activity that will reach them. And sometimes you have to do that. You can do everything. You have a perfect lesson plan and it doesn't go right. That happens. You can do it 1 year and it's perfectly fine. Next year, you have a different set of students and it doesn't work. Okay. It's okay. It's going to happen. I will guarantee it or your money back. Okay. It's going to happen. Now, when you're talking about teaching mathematics equitably, I'm trying to say that right, to all students, there is a big difference between the students who struggle and those who truly have special needs that need that extra assistance. There is a major difference. Sometimes we think about the struggle about those that can't and those that won't. Okay, so there's a difference there. Students that can't do it, they may be deficient in some of the skills that they need to be successful. We have to look for those and build those skills up. Those that choose not to, when we know students that just refuse to do it, that's a different type of thing. That's a different need that they're going to need to get them back on track. So you really have to think about what is equitable to all these students. How I do it for one set of students may not be the right way for another set. So I have to be willing to pivot. In either case, to differentiate the instruction equitably so that all students are learning as much as we can, you got to structure the environment. Okay, there has to be structure. Kids thrive on structure. If you have routines, they thrive on the routines. You will find that in the classroom, there'll be one kid that wants to pass out all the papers. There's one kid that wants to do this. There's one kid that wants to do that. There are other kids that don't want to do it, but they're comfortable in their space. But if you structure the environment where you get everybody to be where they want to be, it's a lot easier to get them there. And that's especially when you have your ADHD kids. You have those, that fidget. You have those that do have behavior issues. You have to structure the environment so that they know there's a line, can't cross it, but then there's also ways that you can help those students. You have to identify and reduce whatever barriers there are. Again, when we talk about behavioral kids, it's not that they can't do the math, it's that sometimes their behavior keeps them from doing the math. It's not that the kids aren't smart. In fact, most of these kids are extremely smart. But if they don't have the structure and they don't have what they need to do, and they don't have that stopping point, that wall, like say, hey, you can't do this, then they're going to think that they can do whatever they want. And that's a problem. They also, if they have a language barrier, they have a cultural barrier. You have to identify that and then reduce that barrier as much as you can. This is not something that you're going to complete in like 5 days and complete all the barriers and get all the kids who struggle where you need to be. It's an ongoing thing. It goes year to year. But as a group of teachers, we can do this. It just takes intentionality. You also have to be and provide clarity. Provide the clarity to the students. Don't mince words. Don't try to use, subtle language. Straightforward. Tell them this is what we have to do. This is what's going on. This is the steps. Because if you aren't clear, they won't be clear. Because they're not good at language yet. A lot of them do not understand. Well, some of them might understand sarcasm a little bit more, but they may not understand it. So they may not understand what the meaning is behind it. So you have to be very clear on what you want them to know and what you need them to do. And then consider alternate assessments. Okay. Not everybody can sit there and take a test for 40 minutes or for 30 minutes or even for 10 minutes. But they know the material. How is there another way you could have them show you that they know? If you got the gifted student that gets through a test in 5 seconds, is there another way that you can have them show something that's really deeper for them? Alternative assessments doesn't mean that they are taking something different, that they should be graded different. We want them to show that they know the standard. If they can show the standard in a different way, that's fine. If they want to create a song that shows that they understand, with a problem. I mean, some kids are very good at, doing really, off the wall things that show that they understand. Why not? It doesn't always have to be a pen and paper showing us the answer. It could be something else. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it just needs that. That ADHD kid needs that creativity area to do what he needs to do. And once they do it, they can show you that they can do it. Sometimes they can't sit down straight. I can tell you, I had a student in my first year teaching. If he did not take his meds, he was crazy. And when I say crazy, I mean, it was like he was off the wall. So we had to make sure that he did that, structure the environment to where he didn't do that. And, there are times when, he was a little off the wall. I can deal with it. When he was really far off the wall, then, it's like, okay, we've got to settle down. But that happens. You're going to have that in the classroom. It's going to happen. How will you deal with it? Especially when you're teaching mathematics, which already you're fighting a cultural thing. And then you want to emphasize practicing. They've got to practice math. Okay, it's not something that they're going to learn it one day and be masters at it. They have to practice. Having coached sports, I coached basketball for years. We had to shoot free throws every single day. Some kids were like, "Oh, we're shooting free throws again." It's like, yeah, we're shooting free throws because you shot like 3 for 14 in the last game as a team. Yes, we need to shoot free throws. We need to practice. It has to happen, and it's equitable for everyone. Everybody is doing it. You also have to do it in mathematics. They have to practice. Just because they did it right the first time doesn't mean they're always going to do it right. Practice and show, and then have them summarize what they are learning, whether that be with their partner, whether that be in front of class, whether that be on a piece of paper. They should be summarizing and putting into words, what did they learn? That's important, okay? So again, equitable access is something that is really big, especially with some of our students that come from a lot of diverse backgrounds. We have socioeconomic issues. You want to make sure that they're all getting as close to the same and right education that they can. when you have culturally and linguistically diverse students. Okay, so if you're going to teach in Kern County, there's a really high likelihood you're going to teach ELMs or EL students. You're going to teach students that do not have English as their first language. So how do you teach math to them? You're going to have, students who come from differentiating cultures that, encourage certain actions. How do you deal with that, especially teaching mathematics? Okay. When you're planning lessons, consider a few of these things. You should consider their funds of knowledge. Now, that does not mean money. It means, what do they bring to the table? What are some important things about who they are that you could tap into that could make the difference? Are they good with technology? Are they good in certain areas? Believe it or not, get a lot of students who are actually really good at math that don't speak English because math tends to be universal. So they come in with some knowledge. I just got to get the language part, that barrier breached, so that way they can access it the way that we're hoping that they get it. Okay, especially here. So it's not that they don't know anything. Believe it or not, these students know a lot more than you might give them credit for. So don't forget about activating that. Know that mathematics is a language all of its own. Okay, numbers are numbers, and in very rare instances, are they different in different cultures. So understanding that means that maybe they know some of this already. They just can't say it in English, or they can't say it out loud. But maybe there's a way that you could do it. Okay, maybe it's just them combining, their language with the actual English term for mathematics. So you might have a cheat sheet for students that has their home language and then the English language, so then they can mix and match and see, oh, this is what this means. Okay, so that's kind of important. That does not mean dumb it down either. Okay, just because they may not have the language or they may come from a different culture does not mean that we should lower our standards. In fact, we should still keep high standards when doing this. Okay, so please don't think that just because they don't speak English, they don't know anything. Just because maybe they come from a different culture or special needs that they don't know anything. In fact, two of my best students during COVID had autism. And they were in my CP stats class, a senior level class, and they were succeeding. In fact, far better than some of my regular students because they were focused. Those expectations didn't change. Just because they had autism does not mean it changed. I still expect them to get to this level, and they got to the level and beyond. Believe it or not, you keep those expectations high, kids will rise to it. But at the same time, you got to make it relevant to them. Okay. We can't talk about, Johnny on the east side of town if they don't know what the east side is. Okay. So it's important that you make it relevant to the students that you have. I know in my school, we do have a large section of Punjabi and Sikh, so I have to think about when I am giving problems, how does that relate to them and how can they relate to the problem to solve it? Okay. So think about where you might have that. If they have a hard time decoding the word problems, okay, what are some ways that I can make it more relevant that they'll be able to see that? Okay. And then identify all their math abilities. Some are going to be good in certain areas, some are not going to be good in certain areas. And that's okay. But you got to identify it. Don't just assume that they don't know just because they don't know English. That's a wrong assumption. You should never make that. Most of our students come from backgrounds where they have a lot of experience in math, probably sometimes more than our native students. Let's tap into that, identify it. They could be, helping out with that, which leads me to my question that I'm going to ask you now. I know I've been talking a while, so I want to make sure you guys get a chance to respond. When dealing with students who come from a different background or language, how would you relate math to them? In your experiences are just as important as the students' experiences. How will you relate that to them? And again, no wrong answers here. Not one wrong answer. You just need to let me know what you think would be able to. Got a couple of responses so far. I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing here. I got one person that talked about using money. Money is universal. Every kid wants money, so talking about that is one way. Um, Connecting in their language, I think, is extremely important. I know some people say we should only teach English. No, connect with them in their language. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, you can't do everything in their language. That's definitely important. But you want to connect their language to what you're learning to English, so that's important too. Um, Show visuals, yes. Visuals are universal. So that's really important. Learn about their background and relate it to them. Okay. So this is, again, you got to know your students. You have to know them. I can't stress that enough. Um, and again, it depends on grade level too. Try to describe it in a different way. I agree with that. Um, Really important to do those things. And again, I don't expect you guys to know all the answers right now. In fact, if you did, again, you'd be ahead of the game. But until you get into your own classroom, if you haven't been in one, it's tough. It really is. Because all of a sudden now you've got to learn your kids. You got to teach multiple subjects, most likely. And, you got to do all of this in a span of days, and get it all done with activities and everything like that and making it relevant. So it is a tough task as a teacher. Uh, it's doable, not going to lie, but it's going to take some hard work. So again, thank you for your responses. I do appreciate that. Again, great stuff. Again, I want to get your mind thinking. How would I approach this? Again, I am not going to be able to teach you all of teaching mathematics in 8 weeks. There's not going to be a way. But I want you to think about different ways that you can approach it, because that's going to be the key. Because you're going to be given stuff as a teacher on what you need to teach. Then you now need to connect it with the kids. Okay? We're almost done, so I want to keep us going. Oh, and you want to ensure, and this is what's called shared power. You want to give power to the kids. You want to give power to their learning. It's important. If they feel that they have power, and not necessarily power over you, I'm just talking about power in what they are learning, they are going to jump leaps and bounds. Students who care or know that they feel like they're being cared for and that they have that ability to be themselves and be successful will be the ones that will run through walls, and they will do everything for you. So you definitely want to encourage that. You also want to make sure that you know that, hey, you are the teacher, you hold that power, and don't let them, kids can be tyrants at times. We all know that. So you have to make sure, hey, dial it back. You have that power, but you want to encourage them to go, hey, go and do. Very important. And let them be who they are. Now, when you're teaching English learners, EL students, okay, English learner students, whether that be Spanish, French, Chinese, Japanese, Punjabi, Hindu, any type of language that's different than English, especially if they have not been in the United States for very long, can be difficult when you're teaching math. It's extremely difficult teaching English or language arts with them, but math is just as difficult, okay? So you want to focus on a few things. You want to focus on academic vocabulary. Just because they don't know English doesn't mean that they don't deserve to know the vocabulary. Say that again. Just because they don't know English, especially at a fluent level, does not mean that that vocabulary for mathematics is not important. They got to learn it. It may take them a while to get it, but you have to encourage it. Okay? Because the only way they're going to get fluent in English is if they use that vocabulary over and over in different ways. You want to still honor their native language, whatever it may be. My students, I encourage them to still speak a little bit of Spanish or whatever language they have. But there are times when I say, hey, I need English now. I need you to talk, and explain it. But then at the same time, I want them to be able to do things in their own language because they feel very comfortable. So that comfort level is important when they're making a transition. You want to make sure that you are combining content and language objectives with EL students. Because for these students, it's not just content. You're not just learning math, but they're also learning English at the same time and learning how to use that language and decipher it and decode. You got to make sure that you are focusing on both those things at the same time, especially like some of us will have EL classes where we are strictly got EL students. And when you have that, you have to be very intentional in how you approach that. Extremely important. Okay. The content is important. The math is important, but the language is just as important because just because I know how to do 2 plus 2, if I can't explain it and use it in another context with language, it's not going to mean anything. That's why that's important. Explicitly teach vocabulary. That goes back to the academic vocabulary. You need to explicitly teach it. You cannot ignore it. You can't say, well, this word's too hard for you. No, no. You want them to learn it. You got to sound it out. You got to do these things. You got to use it in context. You have to teach that vocabulary because, again, if you're teaching elementary, you don't teach them vocabulary there. When they get to the high school level, when now it's starting to ramp up and the vocabulary gets more and more intense, they don't have any basis for that vocabulary. It makes it tough. And then if they choose to go past high school into college, there are very few supports in that respect. So it's very important that we do our job teaching them vocabulary at a young age. Just because they're an EL student, just because they're an English learner, does not mean that they don't deserve to learn vocabulary. You got to build on their background knowledge. An EL student is still a student and has justifiable and worthwhile experiences in their life. Build that background knowledge that they can pull from. Okay? Every student that comes into your classroom will have some sort of knowledge, some sort of experience. Build it and use it. Okay? Please don't ignore that. Don't think that just because they don't speak English, they are a tabula rasa and they have nothing in their brain. They have something. If you can get them to access it, that background knowledge is going to be extremely important. And then you want to use what we call comprehensible input. You might have heard this term before. Okay? You have to do it in such a way that is comprehensible. Okay? They have to understand it. You can't put everything all out there at once. You have to do it in stages. You have to do it in a way that they can do it, then say it, then use it. It has to be done. Too many times, there's a lot of information that's thrown at students, and some of it sticks, some of it doesn't, because it's done in a way that's not comprehensible to them. You know, they're trying to decipher what they're hearing or figure out what they're writing, but they don't have enough time to, put the 2 and 2 together. Okay, so that's going to happen. So be prepared for that. It does mean going maybe a little slower, but that doesn't mean lowering the standards. It just means, hey, we need to give them some time, the wait time, the thinking time, because it's not a matter they don't understand it. They're just trying to decipher between 2 languages or more to get to another language, which is math. So please keep that in mind. And then plan group activities. Okay? Plan group activities to support language development. Pair students together that know the same language that they can help each other out. Plan where they need to express, whether that be in their native language or in English, or give them opportunities to do that. You have to be intentional. If they're going to learn math, they've got to learn language. It's not just numbers, because as they get older, you see in math, sometimes we put letters in the equations. Sometimes we do different things. You have to make sure that you're clear and give them a chance to use that language in context. If they can't use it in context, then they're not going to understand why it's important. Once they're able to do that, not only does their language acquisition increase, but then their mathematics acquisition increases, and little by little they get better. And that's how we get them to be more fluent. But we have to be intentional about it, and we have to encourage them and be perseverant that they're not going to understand it maybe the first time. That doesn't mean they didn't learn anything. It just means that they didn't get it all the way through. We have to figure out, okay, where's that barrier and break through that barrier. Believe it or not, last slide. We're almost done. Believe it or not. Things to consider. when you're creating lessons, think about acceleration and pacing. Think about like when you look at your chapter as you go through these next couple weeks, how long do you think it's going to take to teach a lesson on, say, integers or fractions or, anything, whatever topic you picked? How long do you think it would take? Is it something that they can learn in one day? Is it something that might take a week? Think about that. Now, I don't expect you to have the full answer yet, but think about those things. I know we talk about pacing all the time in high school. We say, okay, we think it's going to take this long, maybe 2 weeks to get through these particular standards. Okay. Then we might realize, oh, something happened or we lost a day due to activities. We need to extend it out. That's fine. Or we realize, hey, they already know it. We can go faster. Those are things that you have to consider because sometimes you're going to be dealing with gifted students. Believe it or not, you may have a class that is really strong. You can go a little bit faster or you can go a little deeper. Okay. So that pacing always has to be something is in the forefront of your mind when you're teaching math. Depth is important. How deep can you get? Okay. So if there's a language issues, you might have a hard time getting as deep as you'd like. So you want to make sure you get the basics of the standard down. Other times, if you don't have language issues, or if you have gifted students who are getting the material quickly, you can go deeper and with more extensions than you would normally go. And that's okay. That happens in classes. Sometimes you might have some students that you can give those extensions because they are already ahead. They understand it when you're reteaching or helping remediate other people in the classroom. The complexity along with depth is important. How complex can you go with your students? That's where you have to know how they're learning. You have to know the language, that they can handle. You also have to understand how complex is it? Are they going to get frustrated? Is it something they can do? These are all things to consider. And notice, we're not really talking about like what the math is, but it's like things you have to consider when you're creating things. Is it a technology tool that you have to teach first before you can do the math? Or is it something where, hey, I can do the math and then I can do this tool to extend the learning and get a little bit deeper into it? Again, those are things you have to consider. Creativity. Okay. Again, some students are perfectly fine doing the things on a pencil and paper and doing 30 problems and they're perfectly good. I was probably one of those kids. I didn't mind doing it. There are other kids who are antsy that would rather, they got their brains going in different directions. They're very creative. They're very artsy. They can do the same thing in only a couple problems. Maybe they can make a video and show that they understand it. Let them use their creativity. Why give them 30 problems when you can give them maybe 3 and they can show you, maybe make a demo video. It's like, hey, this is how you as a 3rd grader should know how to do this. And they use their natural talents. Consider that. Don't think that there's only one way that they can show their learning. Think of multiple ways. Give them choice. I know it's hard to give up and let go in a classroom because you want to keep things, structured. But it is really important that you give them a choice of how they show what they are learning. But also give them a choice to look for different ways of approaching things. There's no necessarily one perfect way of solving a problem, even in mathematics. There are ways that we are used to doing because we have kind of our mechanisms. We have our techniques. But sometimes I found kids, they're like, wait, what if we did this? And you have to think back, like, well, does it work? And you let them go. Let them go and figure it out. And does it work? And you ask them, it's like, did you find it works for everything? And they say yes. Well, let's keep testing it out. And if it does work, hey, you found a way. Nothing wrong with that. Give them a choice. Don't be static. And that's going to be where we do our word problems. Some people are going to look at word problems and solve them one way, and someone might solve it a different way. Doesn't mean that either way is wrong. It just means we looked at it from 2 different perspectives. You want to nurture resilience. If you have kids at home, get them to do chores. They can be resistant. You got to get them to be resilient to say, hey, there's a reason why we're doing this. You have to keep doing this day after day. You have to do this to get better. If you have kids that, play sports, there will be times they don't want to go to practice or they don't want to go to games. They're done. They don't want to be on the team anymore. You got to tell them you got to be resilient. You started something, you got to finish it. Math, you have to do that. And you're going to have to do that constantly because there's always going to be that pull from the students because they see the pull from their parents or from the society that math is not necessary the way that they think. So they're going to be like, well, why do I have to do it? You want to tell them to be resilient. You want to tell them to keep going because the end, even though they'll never see the end right away, is so incredibly powerful for them. When they're able to do things that they thought they never could do before, you want to encourage that. And lastly, or not lastly, we're almost there. You want to make math fun. Okay. So when you guys are thinking about your activities, okay, again, I'm not making you do like a specific lesson plan. I want you to think about activities that will help with the learning of that topic or topics that you have in that chapter. What would make it fun? What would you think would be fun if you were putting yourself back into the grade level that you're doing? What would make it fun? What would be exciting for you? You know, now obviously, something to learn math is not going to be like heads up 7 up. Okay, I love that when we played it at times as a kid, but you can't do that. That's not going to teach them anything. But are there other activities that would be fun that would engage them? You can't do it all the time. It's all fun and games, but it could be something that could be used like, hey, we all learn this. Now let's have that fun. This is an activity, an extension activity, something we can do. Think about ways that you can make it fun. Is there something you can do outside the classroom? Take them outside that they can still do the math, versus just being stuck inside the classroom. Something where they get moving, kinetic energy. Think of different ways that you could do it. And lastly, make sure you give students ownership over their learning. Okay. Make them feel like they have learned it. Now that you have taught it, you'll know that you taught it to them. Make sure they have ownership that, hey, you learned that. You did great. Find ways to encourage that within that. Whether that be through, formative assessments and learning and giving that praise. But make sure that you are highlighting what they have learned so they know it's not just they completed a task, but they completed something that's important, especially mathematics. We want to encourage them to complete that way. Okay, so again, this week, and like I told you, I was going to be done before 7:30 because I don't want to be on here forever. So I'm trying to honor my commitment. Make sure you get your assignments done. Make sure that if you have any questions, definitely email me at any time. I will do my best to respond as quickly as I can. If I don't respond within 24 hours, email me again. Bug me. It's okay. Because sometimes everything gets lost in the shuffle. But if you do run into any issues, let me know. If you haven't signed up, let's see because we had everybody here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we got everybody signed up. Okay, so, and I'm going to tell you right now, we can't have 3 people on 5-8. So someone's got to change. So again, I'll look at this later on. But someone's got to change. And I can look at the history of who's typed in things first. So just want to let you know, make sure you pick your chapter, pick the date. Unfortunately, we only have a couple dates. So someone's got to pick the 15th. Someone's got to pick the 22nd. 15th is in class. Then the 22nd is online. So just keep that in mind. Whoever wants to do that. But make sure you do that. I like the chapters that you guys have picked. I think there's some really good things that we could all learn from it. Okay, so that's a kind of a we thing. But there'll be times that, and make sure you just type it in there. That way I know I see it in the chat right now, not a problem. But just make sure you type it in there, and that way I have that as a record, so that way we know we're going forward. If you haven't done your getting to know you, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yep. So again, and again, just something to get to know you. Some of you guys have seen this before because I kind of used it over and over again. But this is who I am. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I love math. That's my daughter. And I can't believe she's already 22. She's at Coachella right now, having time of her life. Again, I'm a big Lakers fan. Yes, hopefully they'll get 3rd place in the conference. So home games. Big Dodger fan. In fact, I'll be at Dodger Stadium tomorrow, so I'm going to a game. So I do a lot of fun stuff, and I definitely want to travel to Germany. So I'm interested in seeing what you guys have to say about each other. So again, encourage, someone put a down for what? Dodgers or down for Lakers? What's that? I see that in the chat. Oh, I understand, but that's the way things are. Hey, it's all good. I'm a Bills fan too, and I was kind of struggle in January dealing with the Chiefs yet again, but that's neither here or there. I gotta wait for it to start back up again. But again, make sure you do that essay, and then make sure you do the discussion board post. Okay, Angels. Oh, then you must hate the fact we got Otani. Bulls. Wish they were better than they've been. Oh, Bears. My colleague, she's a big Bears fan, and we always go uh, back and forth with that. We always have fun with that. She's got her whole classroom with Bears. I got mine with Bills and Dodgers and Lakers. So we have a lot of fun with it. Uh, but again, make sure you guys are getting things done. If you need anything, check your stuff here. If you run into any technical issues, let me know. Um, yes, yeah, I remember Rojas. Yeah, he's a big Bears fan too. Yes, uh, definitely know that. But just make sure you get everything done. Probably by Sunday, I'll have everything posted for week 2, so you can get that going. And again, probably Monday. I'm thinking probably hopefully I'll have it done Monday. Is the video for next week? There'll be some questions embedded in the video that you'll need to answer on a document, and that'll show me that you one watch the video, and two you listen to it. Okay, it's one thing to play it; it's another thing to listen to it and then understand what I'm asking you to do. As long as you do those things, I'm going to be perfectly fine. Again, next week we will not be meeting on Thursday. I will most likely be in Vegas with a drink in my hand at that point. I can say that because you guys are all college students, okay? I will most likely be that way. I'm getting ready for WrestleMania. I'm going to enjoy my time. So again, I'm going to post everything early so that way you can get things done. So that way, you guys can enjoy your Easter holiday because I know, you might have family that's coming over and doing stuff. So again, enjoy that. But just take care of everything. As long as you do that, we're going to be perfectly fine. And then we will be meeting in class the following week on the 24th. Okay. So make sure you plan on coming to the Bakersfield campus on the 24th. We'll try to start at 5 so I can get you out of there quickly. I'm hoping we're only there for, to like maybe 7 at most. So we can go over everything we need to do, especially as we get ready for our presentations. Okay? Again, I don't want to keep you there forever. I know some teachers like to say all the way to 9. I'm like, oh, no, 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 that's not me. Okay. Because you guys got to do a lot of the work on your own. So again, no classes next week. So don't expect a Zoom. If I see an email saying someone's joining the Zoom meeting, I'm like, nope, because I will not be joining the Zoom meeting. But make sure you get your stuff done. And again, I still will answer my messages and everything throughout the week. So if you do run into any issues, let me know. But outside of that, we're good to go. I recorded this, so that means when we finish, I will download it and then upload it into Brightspace using a YouTube link, so that way you guys can look at it if you need some more information. But outside of that, we're good to go, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend.